Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Good. Okay. Gina, I happen to really like that picture of you with the cap. I think that's really a great picture of you. Okay. Is Mike? I don't see if Mike's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Mike. Why don't you go ahead and do the refuge, the offering, the mandala for us?
Sashi Puki Juxing Metok Drum Rira Bling Shin in De Gin Padi Sangye Shingdu Mikte Uwargi Jokun Namdak Shin La Chupar Shok Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
Very nice. Okay, let's do a refuge prayer. We'll do it in Tibetan. Sangye Chudang Zoki Choknam La Chanchu Bardu Dakni Kyatsu Chi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chudang Zoki Choknam La Chanchu Bardu Dakni Kyatsu Chi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chudang Zoki Chognam La Chanchu Bardu Dakni Kyatsu Chi Daki Jinso Kipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho. Okay, today's class we start the third of the three pillars of Buddhism. The first one being renunciation, the second being bodhicitta, and now the third, correct view. Now, renunciation's pretty straightforward. Bodhicitta's pretty straightforward. Correct view, that's where things get complicated. So, as you go through these courses, we're going to get deeper and deeper into what correct view means. So if you get confused, don't worry about it. Put it on the back burner and think about the fact we are going to try and explain it by the end of the 18 courses. So let's start with, let me back my notes up. Okay. So why study emptiness? If we don't understand the concept of emptiness, you cannot reach a permanent cessation of your mental afflictions, thus reaching nirvana, and cannot even start your path to Buddhahood in this life. So for those of you that aren't thinking about reaching Buddhahood in this life, you just want to understand Buddha's practice and do the best you can, it's still important that we study emptiness and study it thoroughly to the point where you can start to accept it in your life. There are two ways to reach the correct view, the understanding of emptiness. The first is through study, which is what we do in the 18 courses. You learn about it, use reasoning to get an intellectual understanding of it. And then most important, you apply it in everyday life. You can study it, you can read about it all you want. But if you don't put it into your everyday life, it's pointless. The second way is to perceive it directly, which only happens in a deep meditative state. We often say we see emptiness. Well, I haven't seen it. Geshe Michael often talks about seeing emptiness directly, but you do not see it as such. It's a raw mental awareness. Now, if someone comes to you and says they think they've seen emptiness directly, from what Geshe Michael shares with us, they haven't seen it. You don't think you've seen emptiness directly. You know you've seen emptiness directly. And I want to be clear, I have not seen emptiness directly. I believe I've had glimpses of dependent origination, which is fascinating. And that's a prelude to seeing emptiness directly, but I haven't seen emptiness directly. So what do we need to know in order to reach this understanding of emptiness? There are two truths we need to be aware of. And these two truths you need to know perfectly, because throughout courses, we're going to be talking about deceptive and ultimate truth. So you really need to understand this. Deceptive truth. It's usually translated as conventional reality, but Geshe-Michael thinks a better translation is deceptive. This emphasizes the error of this view of reality. Why is this an error? Because conventional reality is really both. It's deceptive, and since the world does not exist in the way we think at all. You are not out there self-existently. I'm not on this screen self-existently. It's depending on cause and effect. So it's deceptive in that it looks like I'm out there, and I am out there, but I'm not out there the way we think I am. I'm out there depending on my karma and your karma ripening. Then there's the ultimate truth. So deceptive truth, it looks like we're out there, but we aren't. Ultimate truth, this is not referring to what we call a four-eyed truth. This is a situation where things appear as they really are, empty of self-nature. Everything, get this, everything I am seeing, you are seeing, unless you've had the direct perception of emptiness, is deceptive reality. It doesn't mean it's not out there. It's not out there the way we think it is. So you really, really have to understand when we say deceptive reality, we're not saying things aren't out there. They are. You see me moving my hand. I am moving my hand, but I'm not moving my hand. You're seeing me move my hand is not the way it looks. It's deceptive in that I'm not out here doing this and anybody would see it. I'm doing this, you're hearing me speak because you have the karma to hear me speak. So you need to understand this. But all objects have both realities, but are not, okay, let me repeat this. All objects have both realities, but they are not both realities. They have both realities, but they aren't both realities, because in reality, I'm the ultimate truth means I'm coming from your projections. The deceptive truth would be that I'm out here self-existently. So you see me and think your mind at this point in your training says I'm out here self-existently, so that's the deceptive truth. But in reality, I'm out here due to your karma ripening, and that's the ultimate truth. We don't see the ultimate truth of this because we haven't seen emptiness directly. The Buddha would be able and is able to see both deceptive and ultimate reality at the same time. An object's ultimate reality is its emptiness. All objects have emptiness. Each object's emptiness is 100% emptiness. There are as many emptinesses as there are existing objects. It's important to realize there's not one big pool of emptiness that things pop out of or are projected onto. Emptiness is an absence of an object's nature to come from itself. Let me repeat that. Emptiness is an absence of an object's nature to come from itself. What it is lacking, or what it is empty of, is a self-nature. This lacking of or absence is a negative thing. Now, this is a problem with the English language trying to describe the concept of emptiness. Because when we say its absence, people think, oh, that's a negative thing. It's an absence, and in that sense, it's negative, but it's not negative in that it's bad. I like to use the term potential. I'm not saying that's a better term. I understand it better to say every object has potential. It has the potential to be there or not to be there, depending on my karma. Emptiness is not a color. It's not a physical appearance. It's an awareness, which is why to perceive it directly, we must be in deep meditation. So when someone comes to you and says, oh, I've seen emptiness directly, it's purple. They haven't seen emptiness directly. It's not purple or green or pink. You don't describe, from what Geshe has shared with us of his direct perception of emptiness, it's not a color. I had a student from South Africa who contacted me and said, I need to talk to Geshe Michael. I want to come to the United States and talk to Geshe Michael. Can you set that up? Well, I'm a student of Geshe Michael's, but I don't set up appointments with the man. I'm lucky to get one myself. And I asked her why. And she said, I think I've seen emptiness directly. And my response was, well, Kate, from what I understand, and I have a limited understanding of at that point, this was, oh golly, when was this? This was 2009. So, oh my God, 14 years ago. If you think you've seen emptiness directly, you haven't. You know when you've seen emptiness directly. If I appear on the screen as if I exist independently of any other factor, this is a deceptive truth that I have and you have for me. My ultimate truth is the fact that I do not exist that way at all, which is not to say I don't exist. So you just really have to understand this. When we're saying the emptiness of something, when we're saying something doesn't exist self-existently, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it exists depending on our causes, our karma, and its ripening. And Geshe-la's, one of Geshe-la's favorite descriptions of this is, if you don't think the bus exists, go ahead and step out in front of it. You're going to be killed. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that, obviously. But the point is, things are out there. This computer's here for me, and this microphone's here for me to talk to you. Out here, but it's not out here self-existently. It's out here because it's dependent on my causes and conditions to have it here. So it's just, I know it's confusing, and for some of you, it's going to be frightening. But it doesn't mean things are not out there. They're just not out there the way we think they are. You do not see either of these realities because we don't really believe yet that there is a deceptive reality. We study it and work on it, begin to sense it through examples in our daily life if we work on it. If we want to get to the second way of understanding emptiness, we must recognize deceptive reality intellectually at first, and then we will come to see it directly. So how can we study deceptive truth? We study deceptive truth through the concept of dependent origination. What is the definition of dependent origination? That which is caused through dependence and origination. That's a pretty weird definition, because when I was taught what a definition was in elementary school, you don't use the very words you're defining. So, be that as it may, it's a way to study the deceptive reality of things, the positive aspect of existing things versus their emptiness. It is the dependent nature of things. Dependent origination is basically stating, this happens, then that happens. The first level of understanding the idea of dependent origination is the idea of karma, cause and effect. So in order to discuss this in greater detail, we need to introduce the four ancient schools of India and relate their views on emptiness and dependent origination. So I'm going to try and share screen. Okay, I want to share screen number 1. So let's see if this happens. So do you see functional schools, independent school, and implication school? Okay, great. So now this chart, this table is very important for you to memorize, because Geshe Michael slips in and out of the four schools of Buddhism constantly. And believe me, when I didn't memorize it to begin with, I was scrambling when he talked about the schools to try and remember what he was saying. My problem with taking notes back when I could is that I get so interested in taking the notes that I lose track of what he's saying. So if you have this memorized, then when he says the four schools of Tibetan Buddhism, you of ancient India, then you go, oh, I know those, and you can write them down easily. So here we go. Functional schools, they're the Hinayana and Mahayana. Functional schools include the Abhidharma school, they're also called the detailists, the Svautantrika, Sautantrika, or Slogic school, the Chittamar or Yogacara, which is mind only, and we'll be fighting the battle between mind only and Madhyamika the rest of these courses. Then there's the independent school, Madhyamika, also called the middle way, and that's composed of two sub-schools, Sautantrika, the independent, and the Prasangika, the consequent school. We are the Madhyamika Prasangika. We're Mahayana practitioners, and we are trying to understand through the teachings of the Prasangika school, the implication school, trying to understand emptiness and dependent origination. So let's get started. Functionalists. Almost everything in the world does something. It functions. If it functions, then it must truly exist. It must have come from something, be caused, and have an effect. So the functionalists say that a dependent origination means all things depend on their causes. Everything comes from a prior cause. And it's not that they're wrong, but they're not as thorough as they could be. So the pen exists because it functions. It was caused by a factory, made in a factory, that's the dependence of the pen. For a functionalist, the emptiness of a pen is that it just does not just occur on its own. So emptiness for a functionalist school advocate is the fact that nothing happens on its own. Okay, true, nothing happens on its own. But dependent origination can be understood in a more subtle way. The independent school, Madhyamika Svautantrika, they say that functionalists are leaving out the existence of things without causes, things that are permanent. There are only a few uncaused things. There are negatives in the fact that Tucson, for example, the fact that Tucson is not Singapore is always true. It can't be partly Tucson and partly Singapore. But if both Tucson and Singapore cease to exist, the fact that Tucson is not Singapore would also cease to exist without changing. So when you talk about something that's not changing, That can get confusing. So here's the way I look at when someone says something's unchanging, emptiness. The emptiness of me is 100% empty. I'm either here or I'm not. I'm either 100% empty or I'm not. So how does this relate to the real world? Well, this is just me, but I think of it as the Star Trek transporter. Star Trek transporter has that colored thing happen as they dissolve into transport limbo. That's slowly going into transport limbo. With emptiness, it's either 100% empty, 100% empty, or it isn't. For instance, if I move my hand up to this location, my hand is 100% there. Now it's 100% somewhere else. Now it's 100% there. Now it's 100% somewhere else. The point being that emptiness, the emptiness of an object is 100%, is not partial. And keep that in the back of your mind. Think about it. That's important for understanding how emptiness works in our everyday life. Space and emptiness are considered to be uncaused, unchanging things. And it's unchanging in the fact that it's either 100% here or it's 100% not here. You can't see that there's like 50% of my hand. So that's my entire hand. 50% of my hand, it's either there or it isn't. There's not 50% of my hand. Now you might say, well, here's 50% of my hand. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we could see it, my hand looking semi-transparent would be 50% of my hand. But we don't see that. We either see the hand or we don't. So the emptiness of my hand is the fact that you see it 100% or you don't see it 100%. The Madhyamika Svatantrika, the independent group, says that all things have parts. Caused, changing, functioning things have parts, and uncaused things like space have parts. So how can space have parts? Good question. Anybody have an answer for that? What are the parts of space? Go ahead and unmute if you have an answer. No?
For example,
Okay.
temperature.
Excuse me?
Temperature.
I'm not.
Okay.
You say it again, Alexander. I'm not following you.
Mm-hmm. Temperature.
Temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very
For
interesting.
example. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Very good. Space has temperature. Well, I have to think about that. I'm not saying it doesn't have temperature. I've never thought about that. Wow. Well, what I was looking for was directions. Space has up, down, north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, etc. So space has directions, and directions make it parts.
What about time?
Time, well, emptiness at any given time has parts. Time has parts, past, present, future. So but time is a changing thing. So Tantra says that things are interdependent because they exist dependent on their parts. They too are correct, more correct than the functionalists, but dependent origination can be understood at an even more subtle level as expounded by the Madhyamika Prasangika, the implication school. We say all things are interdependent in the sense that they exist in dependence upon your thinking them and naming them as you do. Their emptiness is that things do not exist in any other way than your mind thinking of them and naming them as you do. So let me repeat that. Madhyamika Prasangika says that all things are interdependent, or dependent origination, in the sense that they exist in dependence upon you thinking of them and naming them as you do. Their emptiness is that things do not exist in any other way than your mind thinking of them and naming them. So basically what they're saying is nothing outside, nothing I'm seeing is coming from anything other than my karma ripening. So I like to say it this way. I'm not sure this is 100% correct, but it's comforting at this part. It helps me understand. I like to say the Madhyamika Prasangika school says that your karma ripens and then you see it. Your karma ripens and then you see it. So that's something to chew on. We'll be discussing this in much greater detail. When you perceive the pen, you're taking in the data of a long colored object. Well, it's disappearing on me. Long colored object, a top, a cap, and a bottom. When you look at it, you can only perceive one part of it at a time. You take all these clues and create a mental image of a pen. What you are really perceiving is your mental image of a pen that you put onto the bits of data. Now, this gets confusing, and I will honestly admit I still struggle with this. So the idea is there's data out there, and I project pen onto that data and assemble pen. But where does that data come from? What is the data? Geshe talks about a movie screen, and you're projecting, you're making projections of your karmic imprints onto a movie screen and playing it back. Well, that's all well and good, but does that mean that the movie screen self-existent, or I'm projecting the movie screen that I'm projecting my karma onto? I still struggle with that after all these years, but that's an example of something I don't let get between me and my decision that emptiness is real, and I have to act accordingly. So when you get something you put on the back burner, for me, I'm not ignoring it. I'm putting it on the back burner so I can think about it and see how it works in my everyday life. So if you don't understand the concept of emptiness now, hang in there. We'll be constantly discussing it. Understand that basically what it's saying is, and this is the beauty of Buddhism, to me, what it's saying is nothing out there is self-existent. So anything can change at any time. So if what I'm saying is true, then my past is what's making my present, as I've said before, and my present is making my future. And because of karma and emptiness, I can respond in the present in a way that will create the Buddha paradise I want in the future. But because I acted the way I did in the past, that's what's making a world full of former President Trump, the war in Ukraine, the terrible heat, the fires in Maui. When I was in Europe, when I was in 1961, we were in England for a year. And I remember the asphalt getting so soft because it was so warm. What do they call? What does the British call asphalt? They have tarmac. No, not tarmac, that's for an aircraft. Well, when they put down a road, they formulate the asphalt to handle a certain degree of temperature, a certain range of temperature. And if you put down an asphalt that's typically used in Britain for a typical British summer day, and it's 20 degrees hotter, the asphalt gets pretty soft. So that's an unintended consequence of global warming. So why did I get off on that subject? Oh, the heat. the heat wave. It's still pretty hot here, but we routinely live from May to probably early October. We routinely live in 95 to 105 degree temperatures. That's why God made air conditioning, so we can be comfortable. And that's why Europe suffers, because Europe doesn't have air conditioning, because for the most part, your summers don't require it. Well, guess what? They're going to require it. So I've decided the next business I want to have is retrofitting European homes with air conditioning. I think that'll be a really killer market. The trouble is at 70, and the fact that I don't speak any other languages mean it will never happen for me. But that's another story. Okay. When you're seeing the parts, you're not really seeing the pen. And when you see its penness, you can't be seeing its color, but it seems that you are. That's the hardest part with this very subtle idea. We're never really perceiving the object accurately and completely. We have a valid perception of it, but how it works is different than how we think it works. If we want to have the direct perception of emptiness, we must understand this most subtle level. Geshe describes the day when he saw emptiness directly. You will experience the fact that you're not looking at a pot of hot water, but that you're looking at a projection of the mental image of a pot. You put labels on it, on parts to call it a pot. This is your direct perception of dependent origination. That immediately precedes you seeing emptiness directly if you have a meditative skill. So we talked about the emptiness of things, but what about a little bit about the emptiness of self? Does it apply to me? Self meaning any nature or state that objects have in which they are and rely on nothing else. Do I exist? Yes. Emptiness is not saying I don't exist. Does myself exist? Yes, but not in the way I think it does. Does self-nature exist? No. So am I really here? Yes. Am I really here? No. Am I really here in one sense? Am I really here in quotes? Well, I'm here in front of the screen in front of you, so I must be here. Am I really here? Not self-existently. I'm depending on your karma. You're depending on my karma. No school in Buddhism believes the self exists, that self-nature exists. Functionalists say the self has no causes. A self that has no causes does not exist. Svatantrikas say a self that has no parts does not exist. We say the self exists, but without me thinking it. The self that exists without me thinking about it and labeling it in the way I do does not exist. This does not mean I do not exist, or it does not mean that things I perceive do not exist. They do, but not in the way we think. This non-self of some existence of something that exists without relying on anything else is what we call no self. These non-existent selves, me and my world, are the cause of all my suffering. That is because my misperception of these objects as existing independent of my own perception that things are good or bad from their own side. In this misrepresentation of objects as existing independent, not independence, independent. Again, this is where the English language falls apart, because if I say independence, that's not the same as saying independence. So that's annoying. I don't know how it might be in German or in Russian, but that confused the hell out of me when I was starting to learn this. because a teacher would say, doesn't exist independent. Independence or independent? It drove me nuts. The 5 poisons. These are the behaviors that thinking things are self-existent are what's causing our suffering world. There are several lists of poisons, but here are the 5. Ignorant liking. What's ignorant liking? Ignorant liking is you would hurt someone to get what you want. Ignorant disliking, you would hurt someone to avoid what you don't want. Ignorance itself, not understanding karma and emptiness. Pride, where you see others as lower than you. And jealousy, you cannot stand to see others get what they want. If you really are honest with yourself and you think about these 5 poisons, they rule your life, or they did until now, when you now know about them, and they're poisons. They are the afflictions which poison your mind and cause you to do things that generate the kind of present that you don't want. All afflictive emotions are focused upon what you think is a self-existent thing, which happens to come at you from its own side. Once you realize that nothing is coming from its own side, you will not have a negative reaction to something you see as produced by your own karma. You may have regret or sadness, but you won't have an affliction that would perpetuate your stay in samsara. So, I have Parkinson's. I know where it came from. I know it's not self-existent. I know that I could wake up any morning. I could be sitting at my desk and Parkinson's could be gone because it's coming from my karma, and my karma are projections, and they happen 65 times a second. And there's nothing that says my karma for having Parkinson's couldn't end now or in an hour. Now, how do I get that to ripen and have that happen? I'm working on it. I'm serving others as best I can. I'm making sure I don't inconvenience anybody else. And I make sure when I do any of these actions, I dedicate it to my future enlightenment and my future of not having Parkinson's. Now, is that selfish? Well, it's enlightened self-interest. By doing for others what I don't want to see happening to me, I'm taking care of what's happening to me. Now, my inability to help others through my past lives has been so pervasive that my Parkinson's is still here. But it doesn't mean it can't go away. That's really an important thing. And that made my acceptance of having Parkinson's be a much more realistic and not pleasant, but I didn't freak out. I didn't get depressed. I didn't eat half the planet's worth of ice cream. I just sat down and said, okay, this is from inconveniencing others. I need to deal with it. Yeah, and Geshe uses the angry boss story a lot. The surest way to have angry bosses in your future is to yell back at them, thinking they're self-existently there. They're not coming from you. If they're coming from you, you're basically yelling at yourself, which is stupid. David, I'm really mad at you for having an angry boss. Duh. Instead of, David, your angry boss is coming from your past deeds. So if you don't want angry bosses in your future, stop being angry now. Don't get angry at others, no matter what. Now, I don't get angry at others anymore, but I do get angry at myself still. So I'm perpetuating seeing angry people in my future. because I get angry and I wave my hands, or I get upset that something's not happening. I'm setting in the future to see those kind of conditions. I'm getting better at it, but that's one of my struggles with Parkinson's, is the frustration often turns into getting angry at myself for not being able to. I can't eat soup. Well, I can eat soup, but most of it ends up on me. So I have to drink soup through a straw, which limits the soup, since anything with chunks in it's not going to come up the straw. So that's too bad, because I like soup. But you should see me eat soup. Try getting that to go into your mouth. That gets difficult. Maybe I'll make soup today just because I want to. I'm the cook in my family. I've been cooking for my lovely wife for 45 years. I shared recipes. Right, Cornelia? Yeah. I've got all kinds of recipes, but anyway, I'm digressing. The day you see emptiness directly doesn't mean that the world is suddenly a paradise. Rather, it shows you why keeping your behavior pure, your morality must lead to your future paradise. So that's pretty much class for today. The meditation is 15-minute analytical meditation on the three meanings of interdependence. So next class is the final class of, well, we have the review class. So next class, I'm also going to do the PowerPoint presentation on the three principal paths. Now I'm going to I'll send Ale, and she'll send you a handout, so you don't have to, you can make notes on each of the slides. And hopefully this will help if you ever get a chance to do a long meditation on the three principal paths. I've been trying to find a meditation sequence like the death meditation or the source of all my good meditation, but I haven't had any luck with that. No, before we dedicate, speaking of that, those of you that are interested in the death meditation course, I shared with Svetlana the times and the weekends I want to do this. So let me just call up. I'll stop sharing. Okay, let me get to my computer here. I already forgot the dates. Come on, calendar. Okay, I've suggested the 25th through the 27th of August, or the 8th through the 10th of September. And I'm willing, if you can only make some of the classes on one weekend, I'm willing to teach it the same course 2 weekends in a row to make it easier for everybody to get the full coursework. So talk to Svetlana, and we'll set up a link and everything on when we decide which weekend we're doing. Okay. Oh, and I gave Svetlana the schedule I suggest for course number 2. There's a problem with that, and that if we need a translator, my wife's having trouble getting the course dates to work through ACI platform. So I prefer to teach 2 days a week and not skip around which day I'm teaching on, because I think that's just difficult for all of you. So Svetlana's going to look into that, and we'll find out from her what the progress is for course number 2. Okay, let's dedicate our beginning understanding of emptiness. And after we do the dedication, if any of you have questions, let's talk about emptiness, your concept or your understanding of emptiness. So here's our dedication. By the goodness of what I've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. Thank you for the chance to teach this. And I know it's confusing, but it's going to get better. It's worth hanging in there. Okay, for those of you that want to leave, please do. If anybody have questions, fire away.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. No questions, anybody? Okay, we'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.